This is Jordan Sekulow in Washington, D.C., the Capitol in mourning.
Live from Washington, D.C., Jay Sekulow Live. Phone lines are open for your questions right now. Call 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. And now, your host, Jordan Sekulow.
Hey, welcome to Jay Sekulow Live. This is Jordan Sekulow in Washington, D.C., joined by Than Bennett, the ACLJ's Director of Government Affairs. Capitol Hill just observed the moment of silence. The congressional staffers and members of Congress on the steps of the U.S. Capitol just outside the offices of the American Center for Law and Justice. Of course, here in Washington, D.C., legislatively, things have been put on hold. We don't know the next schedule about the repeal vote on health care and those things. It looks like that will be definitely moved from this Wednesday. It won't be happening, so it may be happening next week. And a lot of discussions going on, of course, about rhetoric and Congresswoman Giffords. Let me just say this. First of all, we will take your phone calls today at 1-800-684-3110. Let's just come out of the gate and set things from straight. We should all be praying for the families who have lost loved ones here. 6 people have been killed, not just those that have been injured as well that we should be praying for, but the families who have lost, including the family of that 9-year-old who was born on 9/11. Everyone has heard about her story as well, Christina Green. So I think first off, we need to all be in prayer for the families here, put politics aside. No, that shouldn't matter one bit at all. This was a tragedy and a real crazy person who unfortunately, and those of you who are involved in grassroots politics, you've worked maybe on campaigns, you know that these members of Congress and elected officials and politicians are exposed to the public, and a lot of times there are unfortunately some questionable people that show up at events, and you're never sure, and you want to always make the appropriate decision about who to remove and who to let be there. And you've seen now coming out the reports that this individual, this young man who carried out this horrendous attack, had a long history of kind of stalking in a way Congresswoman Giffords. I will say with some of the rhetorics that's been happening, let's just set things straight here. He has kind of started this obsession with her, this bizarre showing up at her events, and obviously now we know about what he was keeping at his home, these artifacts from her. Started this well before Tea Party, well before President Obama was in office. This started back in 2007. So for people who are trying to connect this to political rhetoric, let me just say this. Congresswoman Giffords is someone we've praised on Jay Sekulow Live before, especially during the immigration and border security debate, as one of the few Democrats who would take a tough stand on border security. She knew that well as a congresswoman on the border with Mexico, representing the 8th District there. She's a blue dog Democrat, very moderate. She's not a hero of the left nor the right. And again, when it comes down to the issue, she was very pro-Second Amendment, so people are trying to make this a gun issue, and I don't think she'd agree with that based on her own personal opinions. And, of course, she was a defender of the freedom of speech, and I think that's something we have to talk about as this kind of an issue, as what do we do next as activists, as the grassroots. I want to play this. This was Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords on the floor of the United States House. She was one of the Democrats that participated in the Constitution reading last week, and so interesting the portion that she ended up reading. Let's listen.
The First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances.
That was Congresswoman Giffords. Our prayers are with her as she is in still in intensive care in a critical condition in Arizona. We have Congressman Trent from Arizona. Many of you have probably seen him on the media throughout this week, and he will be joining us live in just a few minutes on Jay Sekulow Live to get his perspective on this incident in his home state of Arizona. And folks, as we listen to Congresswoman Giffords read the First Amendment, we have to keep that in mind, the right to freedom of speech, not to be abridged by Congress, and in the wake of a tragedy like this, that we're still able to speak out on political issues, that we can have vehement disagreements, but that we don't have to fight each other physically and use violence ever in America. So if you want, I think it's a good time to get the Foundations of Freedom, Constitution, Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence, in honor of what happened this week in freedom of speech. Call 877-989-2255. That's 877-989-2255.
The American Center for Law and Justice is committed to protecting your religious and constitutional freedoms. Whether it's in court or on Capitol Hill, the ACLJ stands ready to defend the Constitution. And there's no better way to get the information you need than through the ACLJ's daily radio broadcast, Jay Sekulow Live. Millions of Americans listen every day, including former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin.
I listen to Jay Sekulow all the time, so I'm learning a lot from Jay and from Jordan.
The ACLJ on the front lines, protecting your religious and constitutional freedoms. And we want you to have an important resource. Free, our gift to you. It's called The Foundations of Freedom, and it includes the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Gettysburg Address. Get your free copy today. Call now, 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or online at aclj.org. At the American Center for Law and Justice, we're dedicated to protecting your religious and constitutional freedoms. And now there's a new way you can stand with the ACLJ. ACLJ Chief Counsel Jay Sekulow with news about an important new way to stay in touch with the ACLJ. Wireless phone service provided by Affinity 4. That's because when you sign up, the proceeds from your monthly service go directly to support the ACLJ. Plus, with low rates starting at $29.99 per month, you get a wide selection of popular phones and flexible and affordable calling plans. Wireless phone service, the latest member benefit that saves you money as you support the ACLJ. Other services include roadside assistance, insurance, DSL for faster internet, and direct TV. Call ACLJ Member Services now, 1-800-311-2501. That's 1-800-311-2501, or online at aclj.org/benefits.
Welcome back to Jay Sekulow Live. This is Jordan Sekulow here in Washington, D.C. If you want to talk to us in the air, folks, we are live, 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. We have a very special guest joining us live right now, Congressman Trent Franks of Arizona, Arizona's 2nd Congressional District, someone who has been on the broadcast a lot. You know him well, and I'm sure you have seen him throughout this weekend as he has been someone that the media is focused on as a representative from Arizona, and also commenting on some of the discussions that have occurred since this tragedy. Congressman Franks, thank you for joining us this morning.
Well, I'm glad to be with you, Jordan, as always.
First, for the people of Arizona, before we go into some questions about some of the politicization of this, tell us, our listeners who are listening around the country, what this incident means for people of Arizona.
Well, Jordan, as you might imagine, there's just a lot of broken hearts in Arizona. All of us are focusing to a great degree on the Congresswoman Gifford's family, and that's as it should be. But, you know, there are others that lost loved ones there. Judge Roll, a precious man. He was an appointee of the Bush administration. He's just a decent, wonderful family man, and he's lost his life, and his family, of course, is just completely crushed. And little girl that lost her life, you know, born on September 11th, the day the airplanes hit the buildings. And I just got to tell you, it's heartbreaking when a little girl who had just been elected to the city or to the student council comes to see how her government works and is killed for her trouble. It is just unbelievable. So there's a lot of broken hearts in Arizona. And we're all praying God's comfort, the comfort only He can give for the families. And, of course, that somehow Gabby Giffords will come back to us as whole as she was when she left.
Let me ask you about that, and that's been the focus of our show today, which has been the prayers for the family and not trying to make this into some of the political discussion that's been around. But since we've got you, I do want to ask you about some of these comments that have come out of the sheriff down there saying this is about the overheated politics and rhetoric, and I know that you've commented a lot on that, and I thought to get your viewpoint on some in the media and some politicians who are trying to lay the blame on some of this on Tea Party or conservative activists, and understanding that our whole audience, I mean, that's who's listening to the broadcast right now. So what do you think about these statements that have come out of people like the sheriff there?
Obviously, I am bewildered and disappointed profoundly in Sheriff Dubnik for making such comments and for politicizing this tragedy at the same moments when people are making funeral arrangements for their loved ones. It is absolutely inappropriate, and it's certainly premature at the very least. We don't really know what the motivations were in this monster's mind when he killed these innocent people. What we do know is that whatever they were, he had insufficient compassion and respect for innocent human life to resist killing people. And I just have to tell you, therein is the real problem, is that we have a person in society that is without compassion and without respect for human life and is willing to kill people to make whatever twisted, bizarre statement he was trying to make. And for people to exploit all of that politically really is reprehensible. I mean, I want to be very direct about that. It's something that is just too sad to really articulate effectively. It's especially significant in that when you look at least the information that we do know about this man, is that there seems to be no political discernment there. There seems to be nothing that we can really figure out about him politically, except that he's just a twisted off, deranged nut that, again, killed innocent people when they were just doing their job.
You know, I saw that you in the final question, because I know you've done a lot of these interviews, and I remember hearing you on the BBC this weekend. Actually, I was in my car about using the term monster about this individual, Jared Loughner. I think that's correct. You said also that he had assaulted our Constitution, our freedom, and I just to get your comments on that as well, to kind of elaborate on that, how this individual, because I think it causes this whole new discussion on speech, freedom of speech, how people should be wording their discussions, so I think as a final question, when I saw that comment from you that this was an assault on our Constitution, I wanted to get your comments on that.
Sure. Well, the last thing I saw Gabby Giffords do on the floor, the last thing I observed her doing, was to do her part in this litany of reading the Constitution that we did for the first time in I think, the Chamber's history, to read the Constitution from the floor. And she didn't know what part she would read, but when her part came up, it happened to be the First Amendment. And she read it with great feeling, and of course that encompasses our right to peaceably assemble in this country. And that's what she was doing. She was exercising that right, doing her job as a member of Congress, when this mindless monster shot her down in the streets of Tucson. And that means that not only was he desecrating an innocent child of God, which is the worst he did, but he was also assaulting the Constitution and freedom itself. And I just have to tell you, it's very important, I believe, for all of us now, as much as we need to be security-minded, not to let this degenerate change our way of life. We need to change his way of life and all those like him, so that they understand that this is, first of all, not going to work. It's not going to stop us from being able to, in a free republic, interact with our constituency and live in the environment of freedom. But it's going to be very unfavorable for them as a result when they try to do things like this.
Congressman,
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, we cannot let him be the sentinel of our debate in this country. People like that, we just need to make sure that they can't do the harm that they're doing, and to try to prevent them when we see them coming, because we should probably seen this guy coming. He was a nut from way back.
I just want to say, Congressman Franks, Arizona's 2nd Congressional District, thank you very much for joining us today. I know you've done many interviews, and thank you for updating our listeners as a representative from Arizona on this tragedy. Thank you again for joining us.
I'm just grateful for all of the things that you folks do. You remember that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Congressman Trent Franks, Arizona's 2nd Congressional District. I want to say again a big thank you to Congressman Franks and his staff for setting it up, this interview up this morning. That was live, folks, and the Congressman has done I can't imagine how many interviews, but every time I've, again, turned on television or the radio, I know he's had to talk about this, and that's not an easy thing to do, to continue to talk about a tragedy that's occurred in your own state. And as a congressman, as someone who does those same events, in the same place to reach out to the constituents. And you see his brave words about not letting this affect us, not letting this change our democracy or our political discussion, or how members of Congress are accessible still to their community. It's unfortunate, I think, as someone who follows politics closely and worked in politics closely. And I'll go to Than Bennett on this, Than, and take your phone calls, 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. Oftentimes we know that we take our listeners, but that many American people, they don't even know who their congressperson is. They don't know their congressman or woman. They don't know their representative. They're not that involved. And here you have an opportunity where a congresswoman is trying to change that, so to make it easy to access them, where you don't have to follow cable news or necessarily listen to talk radio or online. You can just show up at your local grocery store and meet your representative. And, it's that kind of change takes place. And now it takes this kind of an incident for a congresswoman like this to become a household name in America.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And let me just start, Jordan, by just echoing your sentiments. I mean, about this tragedy, my thoughts and prayers are obviously with the victims and their families, both those who've already lost their lives and those that continue to fight for theirs. But this does hit home for me. I've been at a lot of these events. I worked for a member of Congress. I've organized events like these, and I've been in this type of setting, as has Congressman Franks. The entire idea of the whole event is to make the public have an opportunity to interface one-on-one personally with their elected member of Congress. Congresswoman Giffords continued to do those type of events even when others didn't, when the debate got pretty heated. She deserves credit for being right out there in the first week of the new Congress, continuing to do that. It's one of the pillars of our democracy. And honestly, Jordan, this is one of the sort of the secondary tragedies, if you will, of this whole event, is it's almost inevitable that members are going to start putting up a few more firewalls because they're concerned for their safety, and that's certainly understandable. But it is really sad that the actions of such a lunatic, as Congressman Franks said, could cause that to happen, because that interface really is so critical to our democracy.
Congressman Franks mentioned Congresswoman Giffords' reading of the Constitution. I want to play that again for you. She was one of the Democrats that took part in the Constitution reading on the floor of the House last week. Let's play that.
The First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
Congressman Franks called this act by Jared Loughner, this deranged monster, as Congressman Franks said, an assault on our own Constitution, because it does hurt the freedom of speech, the freedom of press, the right to petition your government. And folks, I think this is a day where we decide to offer again the foundations of freedom that includes the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment that Congresswoman Giffords was just reading. If you want your free copy, you can call our toll-free number now, 877-989-2255 to get your free copy of the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and Declaration of Independence. 877-989-2255 or aclj.org.
At the American Center for Law and Justice, we're dedicated to protecting your religious and constitutional freedoms. And now there's a new way you can stand with the ACLJ. ACLJ Chief Counsel Jay Sekulow with news about an important new way to stay in touch with the ACLJ. Wireless phone service provided by Affinity 4. That's because when you sign up, the proceeds from your monthly service go directly to support the ACLJ. Plus, with low rates starting at $29.99 per month, you get a wide selection of popular phones and flexible and affordable calling plans. Wireless phone service, the latest member benefit that saves you money as you support the ACLJ. Other services include roadside assistance, insurance, DSL for faster internet, and direct TV. Call ACLJ Member Services now, 1-800-311-2501. That's 1-800-311-2501 or online at aclj.org/benefits. The American Center for Law and Justice is committed to protecting your religious and constitutional freedoms. Whether it's in court or on Capitol Hill, the ACLJ stands ready to defend the Constitution. And there's no better way to get the information you need than through the ACLJ's daily radio broadcast, Jay Sekulow Live. Millions of Americans listen every day, including former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin.
I listen to Jay Sekulow all the time, so I'm learning a lot from Jay and from Jordan.
The ACLJ on the front lines, protecting your religious and constitutional freedoms. And we want you to have an important resource. free, our gift to you. It's called The Foundations of Freedom, and it includes the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Gettysburg Address. Get your free copy today. Call now, 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or online at aclj.org.
You know, this is such a random act. I don't want to raise alarm to such a rare thing to happen in Tucson, Arizona, which is a wonderful city, and the Northwest Side is a wonderful community. But it just shows that it can happen anywhere, and that's. I think Christina, she was born on 9/11, the day the towers came down in New York City, and he left this tragic day. But everything in the middle, it was beautiful. We had 9 beautiful years with her. I know she wouldn't want things to change. Would not want restrictions. I saw what happened to our lives, specifically because I travel quite a bit. After 9/11, travel became a nightmare. Don't need any more restrictions on our society. I mean,
that was the welcome back to Jay Sekulow Live. That is the father of Christina Green, the 9-year-old who was killed in the tragic shooting this weekend in Arizona. She was born on 9/11, as her father mentioned, and he is someone who travels a lot. And we're talking about freedom and the restrictions on freedom, and even right after that incident, I mean, I'm surprised in some sense he was doing these kind of interviews, but second, to point out that he immediately focused on the fact that this was an isolated incident in a very peaceful community, a great community, and not one that we should have this kind of knee-jerk reaction into restrictions on our rights. And he actually said we should not have more restrictions on our rights. So I'll take your phone calls, 1-800-684-3110. A different kind of week in Washington, D.C., certainly than we expected after last week with the opening of the 112th Congress and the repeal vote on health care, on Obamacare. If you're wondering about that, folks, will not be taking place on Wednesday. That has been pushed back. We will keep you updated on when that is rescheduled and, of course, when things get a bit back to normal here in Washington, D.C., but certainly today and probably through most of this week. This is a city that's in mourning, a capital that will pledge to do the people's business, but there are no roll call votes, no votes scheduled this week in Washington, D.C. I wanted to get right to your phones. Before we do, we're offering again today the Foundations of Freedom, the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and Declaration of Independence. Why? Well, Congresswoman Giffords was someone who took part in the Constitution reading, one of the Democrats who took part, and she actually ended up reading the First Amendment. We played that a couple of times on the broadcast, and also Congressman Franks from Arizona, who joined us live, called this attack an assault on the Constitution, on our Constitution. So we're offering the Foundations of Freedom. You can call and get yours free right now, 877-989-2255 to get your free copy of the Foundations of Freedom. A lot of discussion going on right now about speech, about rhetoric, about the Second Amendment. You should have this document. You call now. It's absolutely free, 877-989-2255. That's 877-989-2255. Sandra calling from New York, online too. Sandra, welcome to Jay Sekulow Live.
Hi, I was just wondering, I'm in New York, and I just spoke to one of our troopers, the state police, and the question is, why wasn't there a security team going along with the congresswoman or any of the political people? Because in New York...
Son, let me answer your question pretty quickly. I mean, depending on where you rank in Congress determines, one, the amount of security that's provided to you by the federal government. Now, certainly if a member of Congress requested security for a public event, their local police would be there, and I'm sure that there was some presence there of police officers like that. But as for personal security as a security detail, that doesn't usually come with being a member of Congress. Now, if you become a leadership role in Congress, certainly the people like the Speaker of the House, the Minority Leader, the Majority Leader in the Senate, and so on, they do have security details, not large security details. I'll tell you, Sandra, from working on presidential campaigns until the very end of the campaign, these candidates who are traveling in places like Iowa and having events like this, around the country, New Hampshire and South Carolina, they don't have big security details, and sometimes they have none at all. It is just the staff, it's the political staff, and certainly, Saunders, unless you're a pretty well-known member of Congress, a lot of times people would not recognize you if you walked by on the street unless you had an event like this. Certainly, there will be a discussion now, Than, about added security for members of Congress, those who decide to do public events. You heard Congressman Frank say, we cannot let this stop us from reaching out to the public. But people would sometimes be surprised here in Washington. I mean, you open the door to the American Center for Law and Justice, and there's senators walking by, and these are guys who aside from the fact that they're elected officials, are sometimes on news all day, so their faces are very recognized, especially here in D.C., and they just walk down the street.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there are 535 members of Congress, Jordan. It would really be almost impossible to provide federal security for all of them. So it's kind of a patchwork network of security. Local law enforcement provides some security. Some members of Congress do have their own security detail. I suspect you'll probably see more of them doing more of that in the future. You heard Heath Shuler, the Democrat from North Carolina, saying he is going to actually start carrying his own weapon at more of his events. He's encouraging his staff to get their concealed carry permits, so you're going to have that debate. I'm sure there's going to be people coming down on all different sides of this, but certainly this illustrates the fact that members of Congress are a target, and security for them and making sure that we provide that's going to be one of the conversations as we move forward.
Linda calling from New York City on line 1. Linda, welcome to Jay Sekulow Live.
Hi, Jordan. Listen, the Republicans have to get backbone. This is the 5 minutes after this happened. Sarah Palin was blamed, and Republicans. They were all defensive over the weekend. Every Republican, even Trent Franks. I mean, they act like they should be blamed for this. This is so sick. I mean, and don't keep postponing this health care thing. They've got to start this next Monday.
Well, Linda, I'll tell you, I mean, you have to be, and I respect your comments, but listen, with the repeal of health care, that's going to be a monumental day in America and in politics. And certainly if that was to occur this Wednesday, I don't think it would get the attention it deserves because the nation is focused right now on this tragedy. And we all have to discuss. And I think, listen, Congressman Franks, I have not heard a thing that I disagree with that he said about this, nor has Sarah Palin even weighed in. Now, certainly some on the far left and some in the media have tried to smear conservatives. And you notice, Linda, I don't even think it's worth talking about. I think we move on, which is exactly what you said. We spend a day or two. That's why I had Congressman Franks on to talk about what this means for Arizona, what this person really was about. But I'm not going to spend my time talking about liberals. There have been all these accusations, the targeting term. And I will tell you, in politics, folks, we use that term interchangeably with any other word in politics. It's just something you use. And someone who wrote a blog for Daily Kos, which is a very liberal site, said, that this congresswoman is dead to me. And that was removed later, but that was written a few days ago. I mean, so the rhetoric that people are talking about are usually is not, I don't think, anyone that was ever calling for violence. And when these individuals strike out, Linda, we know that they are seriously deranged, involved in maybe white supremacist group or reading Hitler. Hate. This was a guy who thought that George W. Bush was responsible for 9/11. This is not a mainstream grassroots activist. And let me just say it right there as we finish the first 30 minutes of this broadcast. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about or trying to defend, because I don't think conservative activists need to defend at all. I think we need to stand firm to our principles. We need to be committed to the issues, and we keep speaking out. And once we have that legislative schedule, folks, and we know when the Obamacare repeal vote's going to occur, we're going to get right back on that issue, folks. We have to continue today fighting for what we believe in our country, but we can still pray for the families, pray for those who have been injured, pray for those who have lost loved ones and have been killed, and of course pray for Congresswoman Gifford's speedy recovery as she's still in critical condition. We got another 30 minutes coming up. We're going to talk also about the vote occurring in southern Sudan with someone from the government there. Get your free copy of the Foundations of Freedom, the Constitution, 877-989-2255. That's 877-989-2255.